Alright, we're going to pick up now at midpoint. This should be, I think, the fourth part and final part of section 1-2. And midpoint is the point that divides a segment into two equal lengths. So we have the red dot in the middle of this black segment would be the midpoint, and it divides this first half into 5 foot and the second half into another 5 foot. So the whole segment would be 10 foot. A segment bisector, well, it could be three different things. It could be a line, it could be a line segment, or it could be a ray. But the thing that all of those figures do is it passes through the midpoint of the line segment. So here's the line segment. Notice that this would have to be the midpoint because it divides this segment into this 7 foot and this 7 foot piece. So right there would be your midpoint. Segment bisector passes through it. It could be the full line for the segment bisector. It could be just the segment that goes from this point to this point. So segment AB could be the bisector. Or it could be a ray that crosses through there. So it could be a ray that starts at B and goes through A. Or we could even put a point right there, call it C. It could be the ray A that passes through C. But basically what a segment bisector tells us is that where it crosses is the midpoint, making this congruent with this part of the segment. Alright, the next page here, we got an example to do. It says the map shows a route for the race. You are at X, which is right down here, and that's 6,000 feet from the first checkpoint C. So I'm going to go ahead and mark the 6,000 as we walk through this. And then it says the second checkpoint D is located at the midpoint between C and at the end of the race Y. So this is the midpoint between C and Y, so that is going to put this and this segment congruent, or the same distance. Alright, the total race is 3 miles. So I'm going to put a big bracket down here, and that's not a very good bracket, but we're going to go with it. And it asks how far apart are the two checkpoints. So it's after this length is what we're trying to figure out. Well, the first thing you probably notice is that your units are different. So you've got to get the same units before you even start working the problem. So if I have 3 miles, to convert that, there's 5,280 foot in a mile. So if I multiply that by 3, now I have the number of feet in 3 miles. So I'm going to cross that out. I'm going to relabel it 15,840 feet. Now I know that 6,000 of those is used up in this first checkpoint. So I can go ahead and subtract the 6,000 from my total number of feet, and that's going to leave me with 9,840 feet for this rest of the race between C and Y. Well, I know that this segment is equal with this segment, so I need to know what half of that is, and that should be the distance in between C and D, which is what we're looking for here. So if I take 9,840 and divide that by 2, I should get my answer from that. So let's see, it'll go 4 times 18, it'll go what, 9 times? So that's going to leave me with a 4, it'll go 2 times, and then the 0. So it looks like the distance between C and D will be 4,920 feet. So go ahead and do these problems at this time. Looks like 8 and 16 from page 17. And you can pause the video if necessary. I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next part, which we're going to create a segment bisector. How to create a segment bisector, first off you need to get your ruler out and go ahead and mark a segment to start with, kind of like I've done here already. Don't make it all the way across the page because it'll be easier to work with if it's a little bit shorter, especially just learning how, because you don't have to stretch your compass out all the way across the page. So something about like this should work. Go ahead and do it right now in your notes in your soft notebook software. Alright, so I've got my compass out now, and I'm going to try and do the segment bisector of this segment. So I'm again going to put my compass, the end point, right at the very end, and I'm going to open my compass about 3/4 of the way across. So I want to definitely open it up over halfway. So about 3/4 of the way across, 75% of the way. Now I'm going to mark an arc that goes about a half a circle all the way up and down. Alright, now I'm going to take my compass, I'm going to put the end point on the other point, or the other end point of the segment. And now I'm going to mark an arc that intersects that other arc that I have in 2 spots there. Well, once I have that, all you need to do is get your straight edge lined up with those 2 intersection points. And if you want to, you could go ahead and label those. You might call that C and D, if this was maybe A, B that we started with. And all we need to do is draw a nice little straight line between those 2 points, and where it crosses our original segment, it cuts it in half, notice. So in other words, this segment is congruent with this segment. So this would be the segment bisector of our original segment. This would be the midpoint here. Okay? Do that construction one more time in your homework at this time. Okay. Alright, we have one more example, and now notice that we have the midpoint of RT, but we don't have a diagram. So I'm going to go ahead and get a line up here so that we have a diagram to look at. So it says we have R and T, and we have the midpoint of that, which is S. Now, it tells us the length of RS is negative 2x. And the length of ST is negative 3x minus 2. And if that's the midpoint, I know that this and this part of the segment is congruent. So the equation we can set up, if these two are congruent, that means they're the equal lengths. So I can say that negative 2x would have to equal negative 3x minus 2. So now we have some algebra work to do again. So I'm going to go ahead and add 3x's to both sides. That's going to leave me with 1x is equal to negative 2. Well, notice the question's after the lengths of the segments of the diagram. So I'm not done. I'm going to have to take that x value and plug it in to find one of those lengths. So I've got negative 2, and this is for length RS, would be negative 2 times negative 2. And that's going to give you 4 for the length of RS. Well, if RS is 4, that's automatically going to tell you that ST has to be congruent, so it's 4 also. And now the entire segment would be adding those two small pieces together to equal the whole. So RT would be 4 plus 4, or 8. So I'm going to go ahead and reveal the problems now. Go ahead and do those from page 17. And the up one, down ones, go ahead and write them down. And towards the end of this hour, we'll go ahead and play up one, down ones. And that concludes lesson 1-2.